there is a unique kind of magic in the memories of our youth, a warmth that lingers in the quiet spaces of our minds. For generations who grew up during the vibrant decades of the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, that magic was delivered directly into our living rooms every single week. We gathered around heavy wooden television sets, adjusting the dials to welcome familiar faces who felt less like distant actors and more like members of our own families. We laughed at their mischief, cried during their heartbreaks, and celebrated their small victories as if they were our own. These child stars, with their bright eyes and effortless charm, captured a pure, untouched innocence that made us believe in the simple beauty of growing up. They were the heartbeat of an era, icons of a simpler time when the world seemed vast, bright, and full of endless possibilities, from the dusty trails of classic television westerns to the sunny suburban streets of beloved family sitcoms. These young performers carried the weight of entire shows on their small shoulders. They made us smile during difficult times, offering a comforting escape from the realities of the world. But screen presence is a delicate illusion, a carefully crafted moment frozen in time. As the years quietly rolled on, the cameras eventually stopped rolling, the studio lights dimmed, and the applause faded into silence. The children who had captured the heart of a nation had to do something far more challenging than acting under the scrutiny of millions. They had to grow up. But growing up in the shadow of early, monumental fame is a path rarely marked by ease. When the intense spotlight of Hollywood finally drifted away, it left behind a profound silence, and within that silence, a multitude of vastly different destinies began to unfold. For decades, audiences have wondered what became of those cherished young faces after they stepped beyond the boundaries of the frame. The stories that emerged from the quiet years following their departures from the spotlight are as diverse as they are deeply moving. Some of these beloved figures made the conscious, quiet choice to walk away from the glamorous allure of celebrity entirely, finding solace and purpose in the most unexpected of places, far removed from the red carpet and autograph lines. Others faced quiet, internal battles, navigating a world that often struggled to see them as anything other than the eternal children they portrayed on screen. As we prepare to look behind the curtain of nostalgia, we begin a journey to uncover the true realities of life after early stardom, exploring the triumphs, the quiet redemptions, and the heartbreaking struggles of the children who once defined our collective youth. To understand the true weight of this journey, one must first understand what happens when the cameras finally stop rolling. For a child star, the set is not just a workplace. It is their entire world. It is a place where they are surrounded by praise, catered to by adults, and shielded from the mundane realities of everyday life. But this golden bubble is incredibly fragile. When a television series is cancelled or a movie franchise comes to an end, that bubble does not simply deflate. It shatters. In an instant, a child who was once recognized on every street corner is expected to return to normal life, to sit in a regular classroom, and to fit in with peers who view them as an alien curiosity. The sudden transition from deafening applause to complete silence is a psychological shockwave that few are prepared to handle. The industry moves on to the next fresh face, leaving the former idol to navigate the confusing waters of adolescence completely alone. This sudden departure from the spotlight creates a strange, lingering duality. To the public, these young actors remain frozen in time, forever preserved in the amber of syndication. We watch their childhood reruns and expect them to remain those sweet, untouched characters forever. But in reality, the clock keeps ticking. The contrast between who they were on screen and who they were becoming in real life began to breed a unique kind of tension. As these young stars grew, they discovered that Hollywood is a demanding master, one that often values the character far more than the actual human being playing the role. For some, the pressure to maintain an impossible image of childhood perfection became an unbearable burden. For others, the realization that their best years might already be behind them before they even reached adulthood was a sobering, terrifying thought. It is within this delicate, high-stakes transition that the paths of our favorite stars began to diverge in dramatic and unexpected ways. For a fortunate few, the ultimate survival strategy was a complete and utter disappearance from the entertainment industry. They chose to trade the fleeting glamour of Hollywood for the quiet, grounding stability of ordinary professions. Consider Mike Vitar, who captured the hearts of a generation as the fiercely confident and adventurous Benny Rodriguez in the beloved baseball classic, The Sandlot. He had the kind of charisma that could have easily sustained a lifelong career in film, yet he chose to walk away, trading the cinematic diamond for a life of real-world heroism. Today, he serves his community as a dedicated firefighter in the bustling city of Los Angeles, saving lives far from the superficial glare of celebrity culture. Similarly, Charlie Corsmo, who shared the screen with cinematic giants as the young Jack Banning in Steven Spielberg's Hook, decided that the magic of Neverland was not enough to keep him anchored to the screen. He turned his formidable intellect toward academia, eventually becoming a highly respected law professor, choosing the quiet prestige of the courtroom and the classroom over the erratic whims of casting directors. This desire for normalcy was also shared by others who experienced the heights of childhood fame. Josh Saviano, known to millions as the loyal, awkwardly sincere Paul Pfeiffer on The Wonder Years, successfully transitioned from the nostalgic suburbs of television to the demanding world of corporate law and business, proving that there is indeed life after the final credits roll. And then there is Danny Lloyd, the quiet child whose wide-eyed terror became permanently etched into horror history in Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece, The Shining. Rather than letting the haunting legacy of the Overlook Hotel define his future, he quietly slipped away from the industry, finding peace and fulfillment as a biology teacher. For these individuals, stepping away from the camera was not a defeat, but a triumphant reclamation of their own lives. They recognized that the spotlight is a temporary companion and that true happiness lies in building a foundation that cannot be swept away by the shifting tides of public interest. But the path of departure was rarely that simple, and for many, the industry left deep, enduring scars before they could even attempt to escape. The history of Hollywood is filled with the quiet exploitation of its youngest talents, a dark reality that was often hidden behind bright smiles and colorful costumes. Jackie Coogan, one of the very first child superstars who rose to global fame alongside Charlie Chaplin in The Kid, faced a devastating betrayal that would shock the nation. Despite earning a massive fortune during his youth, he discovered upon reaching adulthood that his entire wealth had been systematically stolen by his own mother and stepfather. This painful betrayal left him financially ruined, but it ultimately inspired the creation of the Coogan Act, a landmark law designed to protect the earnings of future child performers. Decades later, Diana Sarah Carey, known to silent film audiences as the legendary Baby Peggy, survived her own battles with financial exploitation and industry neglect, dedicating her long life to writing about the harsh, unvarnished realities of early stardom to ensure that the struggles of her generation would never be forgotten. Even when the money was protected, the emotional toll of early fame could be devastatingly high. When a child is thrust into roles of immense intensity, the boundaries between performance and reality can easily begin to blur. Linda Blair was only a young teenager when she delivered her terrifying Oscar-nominated performance in The Exorcist. The role brought her instant, worldwide fame, but it also brought an avalanche of overwhelming controversy, intense public scrutiny, and even death threats from those who could not separate the young actress from the demonic character she portrayed. The immense pressure of this early attention deeply affected her personal life for years, creating a heavy shadow that took decades to lift. Behind the scenes of the seemingly perfect Brady household, Maureen McCormick faced a similar silent crisis. As America's ultimate teenage sweetheart, Marcia Brady, she represented an idealized perfection that she could never hope to maintain in her own life. The relentless pressure to be perfect led her into a dark, descending spiral of addiction and emotional turmoil that nearly destroyed her life before she finally found her way back to healing and self-discovery. This is where the true heart of our exploration reveals itself, laying bare a profound and uncomfortable truth that lies just beneath the glittering surface of television history. When we look back at these cherished child stars, we are not just looking at a collection of individual actors. We are looking at a mirror of our own cultural consumption. For decades, the entertainment industry has treated the innocence of youth as a highly profitable commodity, packaging and selling the warmth of childhood to millions of homes. But this system was never designed to protect the very children who fueled its success. The core of this report, the essential truth that we must confront, is that the very traits we adored in these young performers, their vulnerability, their emotional raw openness, and their eager desire to please, are the exact qualities that made them so susceptible to the relentless pressures of Hollywood. When the camera stops, the machine of entertainment simply moves on, leaving these young souls to reconcile the massive gap between the idealized versions of themselves on screen and the complex, often messy realities of their own human existence. For many of these beloved stars, the transition into adulthood became a desperate struggle to reclaim their own identities from the characters they portrayed. Johnny Whittaker, who once brought endless warmth to family television as the lovable little Jodie Davis on Family Affair, found himself spiraling into a dark world of addiction and personal ruin once the childhood fame began to fade. The loss of the structure, the attention, and the easy validation left a void that took years of painful struggle to fill, though he would eventually find his footing to become an advocate for others fighting those same quiet demons. This pattern of post-fame struggle repeated itself in the life of Danny Pintaro, who grew up before our eyes on the comforting set of Who's the Boss? For him, the end of the sitcom era marked the beginning of a long, difficult journey through addiction and intense personal hardships, a path that forced him to rebuild his entire life from the ground up as he embraced a new mission of recovery and advocacy. These are not isolated incidents of personal failure, they are the direct consequences of a system that demands adult-level performance from developing minds, without offering the emotional scaffolding required to survive the aftermath. This emotional toll was felt deeply by the young women who were cast as the wholesome sweethearts of their respective eras, forced to carry the burden of public expectations while trying to discover who they really were. Melissa Gilbert, the emotional center of Little House on the Prairie as the beloved Laura Ingalls, lived a life of apparent pastoral perfection on screen. Yet behind that comforting image lay a difficult adulthood marked by failed relationships, severe addiction struggles, and deep personal hardships as she fought to escape the shadow of her famous childhood persona. Her co-star, Soleil Moon Frye, who gave hope to lonely children everywhere as the irrepressible Punky Brewster, faced her own quiet battle with identity as she grew up under the constant, unforgiving gaze of the public eye. The pressure to remain the cheerful, optimistic child she played on television created a silent friction that took years of maturity and self-reflection to resolve. In stark contrast, their contemporary Christy McNichol, whose raw emotional performances made her one of the brightest television stars of her generation, eventually chose her own survival over the demands of fame. When the overwhelming pressure of her success began to take a severe toll on her mental health, she made the courageous decision to walk away from Hollywood entirely, prioritizing her inner peace, privacy, and emotional well-being over the hollow promises of a continuing career. But the most tragic chapters of this history are those where the pressure did not just bend these young lives, but completely and permanently broke them. The promise of youth is a beautiful thing, but when it is cut short, it leaves behind a hollow ache that time can never truly heal. Jonathan Brandis, who captured the hearts of millions as a sensitive teenage heartthrob in Sequest DSV, seemed to have the world at his feet. Yet, beneath the smiles and the fan magazine covers, he battled a profound, suffocating loneliness and a growing career disappointment as the transition to adult roles proved painfully difficult. Tragically, he took his own life at the age of 27, a devastating reminder of how quickly the industry can discard those it once celebrated. A similar darkness claimed Brad Renfro, whose raw, intense talent in The Client made him one of the most promising actors of his generation. His rapid ascent to fame was quickly overshadowed by a years-long battle with severe addiction and legal troubles that his young spirit could not withstand, culminating in his tragic death from an overdose at only 25 years old. These young men did not just lose their careers, they lost their futures to a world that took everything they had to give and offered very little protection in return. This heartbreaking pattern stretches back through the decades, proving that the dangers of early stardom are deeply woven into the very fabric of Hollywood history. River Phoenix, whose luminous and deeply wise performances made him the defining young actor of his generation, shocked the world when his life came to a sudden, devastating end outside a nightclub in 1993 at just 23 years old, a victim of the substance abuse that often hides behind the veil of artistic brilliance. Decades earlier, Bobby Driscoll, the legendary voice of Peter Pan and one of Disney's brightest early talents, experienced the cruelest side of the industry when physical adolescence changed his appearance. Abandoned by the studio that had championed him, he drifted into a lonely spiral of addiction, ultimately dying alone and unrecognized in an abandoned building at the age of 31. And perhaps most heart-wrenching of all was the sudden, tragic loss of young Heather O'Rourke, who terrified and enchanted us in Poltergeist. Her innocent life was cut short by a sudden medical tragedy at just 12 years old, leaving her forever frozen in our minds as the sweet girl who spoke of things beyond our understanding. These stories are a stark reminder of why this exploration matters. They show us that behind the comforting nostalgia of our favorite childhood memories lies a profound human cost. A reminder that the stars who brought us so much joy often paid the ultimate price for the magic they left behind. The shadows cast by early fame are long, but they do not always lead to darkness. For many of the young actors who graced our screens, the end of childhood stardom was not the end of their story, but rather the beginning of an extraordinary second act. Some of these individuals possessed a rare resilience, an inner compass that allowed them to navigate the turbulent transition into adulthood and emerge as highly respected masters of their craft. Perhaps no one exemplifies this rare evolution more brilliantly than Jodie Foster. Stunning audiences with an emotionally complex performance in Taxi Driver and Freaky Friday, she proved, even as a young child, that she possessed a depth of talent rare for any age. While so many of her peers struggled to find their footing in the post-childhood years, she steadily transitioned into a powerhouse of cinema, earning multiple Academy Awards and establishing herself as a deeply respected filmmaker and director. Now 63, she remains an intensely private yet towering figure in Hollywood, a living testament to the fact that early genius can indeed mature into lifelong artistic greatness. This remarkable capacity for reinvention was shared by Ron Howard, who grew up in the very center of America's living rooms as the lovable young Opie Taylor on The Andy Griffith Show. Instead of allowing himself to be trapped by the comforting nostalgia of his youth, he used his early experiences on set as a masterclass in filmmaking. He successfully stepped behind the camera, transforming from a beloved child actor into one of the most accomplished and influential directors and producers in modern cinematic history. Now, 72, his legendary career has shaped the very landscape of entertainment. And then there is Kurt Russell, who first captured the hearts of audiences as a charismatic Disney child performer. With a natural charm and relentless work ethic, he defied the traditional pitfalls of early success, transforming seamlessly into an enduring leading man and an undisputed screen legend whose career has spanned multiple decades. For these rare individuals, the spotlight of childhood was not a trap, but a launching pad for a lifetime of creative triumph. For others, the ultimate victory lay in stepping away from the camera entirely to embrace a legacy of grace, public service, and quiet dignity. Shirley Temple, whose dazzling curls and cheerful songs brought hope to a struggling Depression-era America, remains perhaps the most iconic child star in history. As she matured, she made the conscious and graceful decision to leave Hollywood behind, channeling her immense charisma and global recognition into a highly distinguished career in public service and diplomacy. When she passed away peacefully in 2014 at the age of 85, she left behind a legacy that stretched far beyond the silver screen. A similar path of quiet dignity was walked by Claude Jarman Jr., who touched the hearts of millions and earned an Academy Award as a child in The Yearling. Rather than chasing the erratic whims of lifelong fame, he chose a peaceful life behind the scenes, passing away in 25 at the age of 90. Deeply admired by classic film lovers everywhere, even within the tight-knit ensembles of classic television, different stars found vastly different ways to reconcile their childhood legacies. The beloved cast of Little House on the Prairie provides a fascinating study in these contrasting paths. Melissa Sue Anderson, who touched millions as the gentle Mary Ingalls, chose to build a stable and deeply private life far removed from the constant scrutiny of Hollywood, eventually settling quietly in Canada with her family. In contrast, Alison Arngrim, who played the famously cruel Nellie Oleson, the spoiled girl that audiences love to hate, embraced her villainous television image with a wonderful sense of humor and compassion. Now 64, she continues to delight fans at nostalgic events and through comedy, transforming a childhood caricature into a source of enduring joy. Meanwhile, Jonathan Gilbert, who played the mischievous Willie Oleson, chose to disappear completely from the Hollywood spotlight after leaving television, building a quiet and successful career in the world of finance as the decades advanced. New generations of child stars face the same daunting questions of identity, finding innovative ways to apply their talents outside the traditional boundaries of acting. Danica McKellar, who captured the hearts of a generation as Winnie Cooper on The Wonder Years, refused to let her iconic character define her intellect. She pursued higher education with a passion, transforming herself into a highly respected mathematics author who continues to inspire young minds to embrace the beauty of science and education. Her co-star, Fred Savage, who perfectly captured the bittersweet pains of growing up as Kevin Arnold, successfully transitioned his creative energies behind the camera, establishing a long and respected career as a television director and producer. In the modern era, Frankie Muniz, who became a household name as the overwhelmed young genius in Malcolm in the Middle, chose to trade the hectic pressures of Hollywood for the high-octane excitement of professional racing and business, finding a sense of control and peace that early fame had denied him. This search for autonomy also defined the lives of Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, who grew up before the eyes of millions as the shared face of little Michelle Tanner on Full House. Before they had even reached adulthood, they had built a massive billion-dollar brand, yet they made the deliberate choice to abandon acting almost entirely. Today at 39, they are highly respected forces in the elite world of fashion, choosing privacy and distance from the relentless celebrity culture of their youth. And who could forget Jeff Cohen, who brought endless laughter to audiences as the lovable, nervous chunk in the classic adventure film The Goonies. Recognizing that the whims of acting are fleeting, he walked away from the camera to pursue a career in law, ultimately becoming a highly successful entertainment attorney who now protects the interests of a new generation of creators. These diverse journeys remind us that the end of childhood fame is not a tragic conclusion, but an open door. Whether through the pursuit of education, the transition behind the camera, or the courage to step into entirely new industries, these former stars showed that the strength of character forged in their youth could guide them toward fulfilling, peaceful, and deeply successful lives far beyond the boundaries of the screen. As we look back across the vast tapestry of television and film history, we realize that the stories of these child stars are not merely individual biographies. They are the collective chapters of our own lives, a shared history written in the flickering glow of the screen. For so many of us, the characters these young actors portrayed became a comforting constant in an ever-changing world. When we remember them, we are also remembering the living rooms of our childhood, the warmth of family gatherings, and the simple, untroubled days when the future was something to be welcomed rather than feared. These stars were the guardians of our innocence, and though their own lives often took them down dark and difficult roads, the light they brought into our homes remains entirely undimmed. Their enduring legacy is a powerful reminder of the delicate, fleeting nature of youth and the profound impact that a single, genuine performance can have on millions of lives across generations. For some of these cherished performers, the journey through the decades was defined by a quiet, steady preservation of the golden era that created them. Angela Cartwright, who won hearts as the bright and lovable Penny Robinson on Lost in Space, spent her youth exploring the stars on screen. As she matured, she found a new way to capture the magic of the world, dedicating her life to photography, art, and actively preserving the precious memories of classic television history. Now 73, she stands as a bridge between the pioneering days of science fiction and the modern fans who still hold those early adventures close to their hearts. Her co-star Bill Mumy, who captured our childhood wonder as the brave young Will Robinson, similarly remained a beloved figure in the science fiction community. Continuing to work in music, writing, and entertainment at 72, he has carried the spirit of adventure into the modern era, reminding us that the curiosity of youth never truly has to fade. Together, they represent a rare, beautiful continuity, proving that it is possible to honor one's childhood legacy while continuing to grow and create as an adult. This same warmth and connection to the past is felt in the lives of those who defined the comforting family sitcoms of the 1960s. Stanley Livingston and Barry Livingston, who grew up before America's eyes as Chip and Ernie Douglas on the long-running series My Three Sons, became the ultimate television brothers. While Stanley, now 75, remains warmly connected to nostalgic Fruit fans through appearances and interviews that celebrate sitcom history, Barry successfully transitioned his early talents into a continuous, decades-long acting career that extended far into adulthood. Now 72, he continues to work actively in the entertainment industry, representing a rare example of a child star who navigated the treacherous waters of Hollywood without losing his passion for the craft. And then there is John Provost, who at 76 still carries the affection of millions who remember him as little Timmy Martin on Lassie. The innocent, heartfelt bond he shared with his famous canine companion on screen represented a gentler era of television, and today he remains a cherished symbol of that nostalgic past, warmly embracing the fans who still find comfort in those classic stories. Yet, for many other young performers, the price of early success was a lifetime of quiet anonymity. A deliberate choice to trade the superficial glamour of Hollywood for the peaceful simplicity of a private life. Lindsay Greenbush and Sidney Greenbush, who shared the role of little Carrie Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie, grew up before millions of loyal viewers each week, their innocent smiles becoming part of America's nostalgic family memories. Today, at 55, the twins live quiet lives far removed from the public eye, choosing the peace of normalcy over the fleeting attention of their youth. Similarly, Carrie Henn, whose deeply emotional performance as the terrified young Newt in Aliens made her an instant science fiction icon, chose not to pursue a professional acting career after her brilliant debut. Now 49, she works quietly and passionately in the field of education, finding true fulfillment in shaping young minds rather than chasing the spotlight. For these individuals, the true victory of adulthood was the courage to step off the stage and build a life on their own terms. As we honor those who are still with us, we must also pause to remember the legendary figures who have passed on, leaving behind a timeless cinematic legacy that continues to inspire. Margaret O'Brien, one of classic Hollywood's most beloved child actresses, moved audiences to tears with her extraordinary emotional depth in films like Meet Me in St. Louis. Now 89, she remains celebrated as a treasured, living symbol of Hollywood's golden age. We remember the spirited Benita Granville, whose lively charm in the classic Nancy Drew series made her an instant favorite before she transitioned into a successful producer behind the scenes, passing away in 1988. We remember Johnny Crawford, the young Mark McCain on The Rifleman, whose natural warmth represented the innocence of a gentler era before his passing in 2021. We honor the memory of Tony Dow, who represented the ideal older brother as Wally Cleaver on Leave It to Beaver, and who passed away in 2022 after a long life of artistic pursuit and personal resilience. And we remember the elegant Deanna Durbin, who enchanted the world with her extraordinary voice in the 1930s before completely abandoning celebrity life for a quiet, private existence in France. Passing away in 2013 at 91, these stories, both the triumphant and the tragic, form a powerful mosaic of human resilience. They remind us that behind every iconic child character was a real human child, navigating a world of immense pressure, high expectations, and rapid change. Some found happiness by walking away, while others found strength by staying and adapting. But regardless of where their paths ultimately